I said this last week. Why did you pick marriage be boring?
Because I think it's important that we let people know the real deal about marriage from someone who is married, because I
Mhm.
think that marriage has a branding problem. I think that we show people the wedding and the big dresses and the vacations and the babies and all these beautiful things, but we don't talk about the mundane, everyday part of marriage. And even though I said marriage be boring, marriage is really not boring.
No,
Marriage
it's
is
not.
beautiful.
It's not. But I think that that term boring gives you the connotation that it literally is boring and there's nothing to it. It's non-excited. It's non-dramatic. All those things that you think that comes along with being bored is
A negative.
really not related to
Yeah, we're
marriage.
going to make you see being bored in a different light after
Right.
this
Right.
episode tonight.
Yes. So we wanted to start that out with some of the things that we always talk about on the Rich Relationship podcast, or the videos that we try to put out, is we want to actually bring value in your relationships, because that's our main mission and our main goal is not just to be an per, entertainment oriented channel, but one that actually brings value. So if you spend time with us, it's something that you can take away and actually apply to your relationship right off the bat. And that's something that we always desire to do.
Yes.
So the very first beginning, when you talk about boring, the product of being boring is one thing that's going to come out of the relationship that is not necessarily boring, is you're actually going to have a level of comfort and familiarity with your significant other, your partner, your marriage, your spouse, in your relationship.
And I think a part of when you think about, sometimes when things are boring, they make you sleep. But in order to sleep, it makes you rest. And so I think that a part of what marriage brings that we don't show is peace. It allows you to know that if you want to plan or schedule something, you have someone to do that with. And so I think so many times in marriage we neglect or we take for granted that comfort and that security that marriage provides us with. And there is the mundane part of marriage that we don't talk about. And so we want to bring that to you and help you to see that while what you see about marriage may not be everything that it is, but then there are also many things that we consider negative that really are positive.
And one of the positives is actually it's built on a solid foundation when it comes to your relationship. Over the long term, when you think about your relationship, that is something that you kind of take for granted and you don't think about it. But a solid foundation is something that you always want to have and you always want to depend on. And it's going to be there when times get rough and times get hard.
Yeah, I think about something as simple as I did this. I don't know if you remember, I did this series about mastering the mundane. I think so many times we don't position ourselves to be a wife. We don't position ourselves to be in a long-standing relationship. And I think that that's something that we really need to learn how to do. And so when I thought about this, that marriage is boring, I think that we need to take into consideration that sometimes the parts of marriage that we see as being the most important part is the part that's not important.
Right, right. And so that's one of the byproducts of when we say marriage be boring. The second one that we think about is you find that when you're bored, you're going to have less drama. You're going to have less drama, less conflict, less confusion, and those things, because you are investing time, effort, and energy into your relationship with this person, which is going to be a long-term effect of what we would think as boring.
Right.
It actually is going to reduce conflict and stress in your relationship.
And I think a part of it is that when you think about something always in constant movement, always in constant, in a state of constantly just no rest, that can be something that can increase stress and anxiety. And so I think that when you think of marriage as a safe place where you can go and you can enjoy each other and you can do simple things like, after this, we're going to go and have dinner together.
Right, right.
And so I think there's so many things about being in a relationship with another person that is very mundane and it is very repetitive, but all of those things are benefits to your health.
And you think about what's going on in society today when it talks about, we are talking about everybody just seems so angry and mad about every little thing. And even when you see it on all of well, I hate to say it, but reality shows or even just informational or videos or anything that you watch or you may consume, you may want to get something that's going to be beneficial to your relationship. But it's hard because it always seems like everybody's angry, mad, or in conflict or having drama about something. That is not boring. While it may be entertaining and it's not boring, it's not something that is going to sustain the long-term value in your relationship. You only can take so much drama. You only can take so much conflict, especially if you're not equipped to actually resolve those conflicts and resolve those difficulties that you find yourself in. You're going to wish you had some boredom when it comes to your relationship because you're going to be in constant stress and strife. And that's nothing that's going to be beneficial towards your relationship overall.
We were watching someone's video, and there's a woman, and she was being honest, and she said, I made a decision to divorce my husband because he wasn't where I was at. He wasn't making the money I made. I felt like I had outgrown him. I was listening to people in my circle, and she was saying how she regretted that decision. And so I think sometimes what we want and what we get don't line up because we're allowing outside forces to dictate to us what we're supposed to have. We're allowing the comparison trap to tell us, oh no, you don't want that. You don't want someone that's stable and someone that's easygoing and laid back. You want someone that's going to be aggressive and and just always going. Well, that really wears you out. I think a part of the reason why in society we have so much stress and anxiety and divorce is because we're not going into marriages with a perspective that this person is supposed to add value. They're supposed to bring joy. They're supposed to bring peace to my life, not a constant state of there's always something going on.
Right. And you said something that was really, really important in that when you talk about being boring in your relationship, one of the byproducts that is something that is definitely a benefit. And if you ask anybody who's been in a long-term relationship, they will always say, this is my best friend. Your significant other, your spouse, your marriage, this is the person who is your best friend. That is a byproduct. And if that person is not your best friend, I like to put it this way. It gives you a deeper level of intimacy that you build. You hear us talk about intimacy all the time on our episodes. We mention it constantly because it is that important when it comes to your relationship. So when you think about the deeper intimacy that is built with someone that is your best friend, while that may sound boring, but it can be very, very good.
Yeah, and very valuable. Because I think so many times we have things flipped around. We see what's good as bad and what's bad as good. And so that's part of the reason why we, did a flip on the title, because so many times we don't realize that what we're saying we want is boring, but what we're pursuing is a constant sense of excitement, and we want to be entertained. And so we got to really realize that when we say we want to spend the rest of our life with another person, there is going to be some things that is going to be very mundane and very ordinary. But that's not all of your relationship. All of your relationship is not just the mundane and the ordinary. It is the excitement and the joy and the intimacy and the stability. It's all of those things. So we want to make sure that we present marriage in a way, because I said it before, we have problems, is that when we have problems with the sound, was that marriage has a branding problem. We sell the wedding and the dress and the trips, and we sell all of those things, but we really don't let people know that there's going to be making beds and
the daily efforts and chores of life.
That is the majority of your marriage. And so life is 80% work and 20% play. And I think that unfortunately we don't realize that. We think that, so we present the 20% as if it's all of our relationship, and we never talk about the 80%. And so we want to make sure that we're sharing with you guys our whole life.
Right.
Because Gil and I are Gil's friend came from New York and visited. He's like, oh my gosh, you guys are so busy. Well, actually, we're very chill. We're very calm. We are perfectly content.
Boring. No, I'm sorry.
That people are like, oh my gosh, you guys look so young. We live a very boring, calm life. And so all the excitement is the things that we're sharing with you, just so that you just have a realistic idea of what relationships are really about.
It wasn't boring when the sound didn't work when we started this live stream. That's the excitement part, So those are the things that if you just joined us, we appreciate you coming back. and hanging out with us. We're actually talking about marriage be boring, that connotation that it gets attached to marriage in a negative sense. But we're talking about the byproducts and the positivity of what that means when you're in a stable, healthy relationship. And if you're not, we're going to help you with some of the things that you can maybe start implementing and actually start getting involved with in your relationship that's going to get it to that boring state. Because it's fun to be boring. I know it sounds crazy, but if you listen, you're going to actually
it's
get
beneficial to be boring.
Exactly. So one of the other byproducts that you actually get is you actually rediscover why you actually got together.
Yeah.
Whether it's been for us, going on 35 years, we're constantly still discovering new things about each other. And while you may say, like, what? Well, for example, Renee actually has picked up with the whole YouTube and graphics and all those things. That is something that I have been involved with my natural career in IT for a long time. But now when she's actually involved in it from a different aspect, we have conversations about something that is naturally, while it may be my vocation, it's just always something that I've been interested in. And to see her grow and to develop into this person that is like, wow, she's a nerd, y'all. That's sexy to me. Being a nerd is sexy to me. So while it may be boring too, but it's sexy to me. So I love it, So that's just one of the things that we talk about, that I don't take those things for granted. While she still had great attributes and things like that about what she has done in the past, I'm constantly rediscovering the things about her right now that is so great.
And and the thing that I can say that is amazing to me.
Yes, a sexy nerd, Bill. The whole
I think a part of it is that we have got to be open to the reality that the person that you're with is going to change.
Yes.
Even though, there's things that are, certain things about our personalities are not going to change, that we have to understand that marriage is not supposed to be something that you regret.
No.
It's not supposed to be something that you dread. It's something that you enjoy. And I think so many times you don't hear that.
Mm-hmm.
You don't hear couples talking about that we enjoy just going to Cracker Barrel and sitting down and just having coffee and just eating breakfast together. Regardless of how long you've been together, I think a part of the mundaneness is don't forget doing the stuff that you did to get that person. You have to go back. So sometimes when things considered quote unquote boring, it gives you that still time to rediscover the things that you fell in love with about that person. I remember reading a story a long time ago about a couple who was about to get a divorce, and what the counselor had them to do was they had a big box of all these memories, and they had them to go back into that box and look through. They were looking for a piece of paper, but through the process of looking through this box, they were like, oh, I remember we did this. We went on this trip together. Oh, I remember we did this. Sometimes you need to go back through your memories, back through your experiences to rediscover what made you fall in love with that person. Because sometimes we can get so busy and life is so hectic that we forget about the commitment that we made to one another.
Right. And I love what you just said there. I said where you said, and that's mixed Rapunzel family. I saw a quote once where a guy said he divorced his wife because they only talk about the mortgage, the kids, and their jobs, which is the mundane things of life that can actually take over your relationship. We agree with that 100%. We're actually going to talk about that here a little bit more, because those are the things that will suffocate and strangle your relationship if you don't put it in a proper position, in a proper place. That is something that you have to be on guard for. Yeah. So when we talk about it being boring, while those things are important, there are things that will take away from your relationship as well. And we're going to share some of that with you also.
And I think like the comment that was just made, I talked about that a few minutes ago about how the lady said that she got a divorce from her husband because she felt like she had outgrown him. I don't think that people get divorced because, to me, that's the symptom.
Right.
If I'm not willing to do the work, that's one of the things we're going to talk about too. We have to be willing to do the work to make our marriage a priority. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we did, and we talked about it before, was as a couple, we've always made our relationship with God and our relationship with each other, ourselves and each other, a priority. If you don't make date night, or if you don't make spending time together as a couple a priority, it's easy for you to lose sight of that. So you do have to revisit what made you fall in love with this person. You have to remind yourself. And I think like one of the things that I appreciate so much about Gil, what this new thing we're doing, it is all consuming. And the thing that I appreciate about him is that he gives me the freedom to really develop all of who I am. He's not sitting on the side pouting or being upset or having a temper tantrum. He'll say, hey babe, I need your time. Hey, because sometimes we act out of our need without communicating our need. Mm-hmm. So if you need me, tell me you need me. Don't act like a little kid. And I think sometimes we don't know how to communicate. So just like you appreciate the fact that I'm a nerd now and I'm learning to use all these new tools, I appreciate that you don't allow your masculinity to suffocate you.
Right. And I think about that when we're talking about marriage be boring. Well, this is some of the byproducts of it, is where you are supporting each other in something that may be a new endeavor, or maybe something that they're trying to get off the ground, whether it's a business or a vocation or school or whatever it may be. You have to lend that support to them to get them to the place that they want to be, because this is your best friend that we talked about already. So you should be there and wanting to support them in their efforts and what they're trying to do, and not get to the point to where, like we always tell our couples, anything that you don't talk about, you're going to act it out.
Yes, you are.
And if you are going through some struggles and strife, there's probably some underlying things that you just haven't vocalized or discussed or communicated with this person.
Or you don't know how to.
Yeah, and that's something that you really have to be aware of in the boring aspect of your relationship, because those are the things that are going to undermine it and destroy it if you allow it and don't take action against it.
You know the way I see it?
How do you see it?
I see it that if marriage is a ship, and the fun and the excitement is the ship needs an anchor. Oh, and absolutely. I think that the mundane, boring things are what anchor us, because you're not going to live on vacation. You're not going to live for the wedding. You're living in every day. And so I think that if you have a solid foundation, if you have the anchor of the communication and the conflict resolution and making up the bed and doing dishes and all those things, if those are secure, when life comes, mm-hmm. the storms of life come, your relationship has what it takes to be able to sustain, not just being married and not just existing, but really thriving. I think that comes from the thing that we ignore. It comes from conflict resolution, communication. It comes from selflessness. Right. It comes from rediscovering each other again. And I think that those are the things that are not being discussed or being brought to the front. So people ignore and they don't see that it's important. So we want to bring that to the front.
So one of the things we actually want to bring to the front is some other things that you can actually do when it comes to taking actionable things and some thoughts that we can plant in your mind. That when we were titling this get together, we were talking about it like, what are we going to talk about this week? One of the things that came to me was, there's a TV show that I like to watch, and it's about routines. And the TV show, the main character in the show has rules for life. Just like we use biblical principles and things like that in our normal everyday life. I thought about that as it related to our relationship, and we're going to share with you some of those rules that I wanted to title this kind of talk under the heading of things I wish I knew before I got married. And that's where we kind of going to segue into as we talk about it now. And the first one, you may have seen it in maybe some of the other social media platforms. It's a topic of discussion, but I didn't copy it from there. It was just something that came out of this thought process.
Okay if you did.
Well, okay. I'll just tell you what it is then. I'll give you the statement and you can start discussing it with your significant other, your partner, and say, is love enough? I'm going to pause right there.